Right. That's okay, Becky.
Good evening and welcome to the August 20th regular board meeting of the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 21. Debbie, could you check on quorum, please?
Yes, certainly. Phil,
Aye.
Stacy Allen is not yet here. Myself, yes. Arlen,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Stacy,
Yes.
and Jessica.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. This meeting is now called to order. Would everybody please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Flags open. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome everyone to our board meeting. Before we move into board communications, I can't let this date pass. 2 days and 100 years ago was the ratification of the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote finally after 144 years. And as I look around to my colleagues up here and to members of the audience and the staff, my 5 daughters, my wife, I can't imagine that it took 144 years for that to occur. But I'm so glad it did. Congratulations, women's suffrage, 102 years ago. With that, let's go on to board communications, starting with NSSEO. Debbie?
It was a rather quick meeting. Things are going along as difficult as they are here with trying to get everything coordinated for remote learning. It's a much more difficult population of students. So there's a lot more, but they're working on it. So I'll probably have more to update next month on how that's going.
Okay, thank you. EdRed and IESB update, Bill?
Thank you, Phil. First,
And
pleasure
welcome, by the
it's-
way, welcome back to
It's a pleasure to be
in-person.
back. It really is. See all these usually friendly faces. With IASB first, as I mentioned previously, the fall dinner meeting had been canceled to be held in person.
Excuse me,
Now
Bill,
we have a-
I can't hear you.
We now have a date for the fall dinner meeting, which will be held virtually on October 30th. I have not yet heard back from Dean Alinari as to whether or not we will be able to observe other division meetings. I have a call into her and I'll let you all know once I hear that. Additionally, we all know the joint annual conference has been canceled. In its place, however, a virtual summit, that's the title of it, will be held on November 20th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. The event will include a keynote speaker and several breakout sessions. There will be more information to come. Let me transfer over to my EdRed notes. EdRed's first annual kickoff luncheon will also be a virtual meeting this year and will be held on Wednesday, October 11th. Watch for a follow-up email from Sarah Hartwick if you're interested in attending. The first EdRed regular meeting will be Friday, November the 6th. No word yet if it's going to be virtual, but I would expect that to be the case. Earlier this month, the first meeting of EdRed's Equity Ad Hoc Committee meeting was held. As Jessica is sitting on that meeting, I'll defer to her for an update.
You
Go
want
ahead.
me to do that now, Phil?
Sure.
Sure. This is a new ad hoc committee that Sarah Hartwick started. As I understand it, the 2 goals are to evaluate prior legislative initiatives and determine how EdRed is going to be its voice going forward. The committee as a whole will meet periodically, but we're also divided into 4 subgroups to address issues like student discipline and SRO presence on campus, student data reporting of discipline and arrests, curriculum and increasing efforts at BIPOC candidate attraction or recruitment and retention, and staff professional development. I've requested to sit on those last 2 committees. And as I recall, I think I've been placed on both of those, but I'm not 100% sure. I'll provide updates as the committee as a whole meets and as the two subgroups I'm on meet.
Very good. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Bill. And one other thing, I'm not sure if you had mentioned this, Bill, and I just didn't hear you, but 2 weeks ago, the IESB had the resolutions committee meeting. Had you mentioned that?
I did not mention it.
Okay.
I was not involved in the meeting, so other than that, I have no
Okay.
update to provide.
There were 14 resolutions submitted this year. We'll all be glad to know that the gun resolution did not make another follow-up resolution. First time in 5 years, I think. So there will be a delegate assembly on Saturday. More details will be forthcoming on that, Deb.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Arlen?
I did hand out to you the North Cook update. You got it in your packet. Nothing earth shaking except they say they're ready for kids and are organized and spent the summer getting ready. And then secondly, I really can't hear you guys at the other end. So either send me notes or please speak louder into the microphone as I am right now. I'd appreciate it.
Arlen, nobody's ever told me I talk too softly, but I'll do better for you.
I didn't hear a word you just said.
Would you like us
I'm
to
a-
translate?
Put it next to your mouth.
Any
Okay.
closer and I'll be eating it.
Unfortunately, with these microphones, you pretty much have to do that.
You
You
gotta
need to
do
be
that,
right
right?
on top of them, otherwise it will not pick it up.
Okay, we'll work on it.
Okay. Were there
Thank
any-
you.
Any other local agencies? Stacy, anything to share tonight? No? Okay. I did want to recognize our community representative, Sherry Klum. Welcome, Sherry. Haven't seen you in a few months since we haven't been in person. Good to see you. Glad that you're here with us. We'll move into staff communications superintendent's report, Dr. Conley.
Good evening, everybody. I have a report slide deck that I'd like to switch over to here. So if you just give me a moment to pull that up and share my screen so that those who may be viewing the live stream can also follow along. Okay, so as the board knows, today was our first official day of student attendance, albeit in a distance learning format. And so I wanted to give the board an update on where we are in our opening of school process. Again, as you know, all students began their academic year today in a distance learning format. We are continue on a daily basis to be reviewing the COVID-19 infection information regionally, as much locally as we can, as well as statewide. And again, we continue to hope that we will be able to move forward with our plan of welcoming students back to in-person instruction on October 5th. As the governor noted yesterday, however, unfortunately right now, things are not going in the right direction. So we hope that is something that is mitigated over the next couple of weeks, and that we'll be able to make that move. I did want to just reinforce that we do have smaller groups of students in specific high need special programming areas that will begin some limited in-person learning on August 31st. Again, those will be smaller groups. I do want to let the board know that there have been some recent updates from the Illinois Department of Public Health that really does change some things in terms of our ability to, or how we're going to be able to resume in person. Probably the biggest one being that they have redefined or tightened the definition of close contact. And so now, whereas we all summer we're moving under the assumption that close contact meant 6 feet or less, masked or unmasked, for up to 15 minutes or for 15 minutes. And that was understood to be at a time. Indeed, now it is 6 feet, masked or unmasked, 15 minutes cumulatively. Now, that seems like a very minor switch. I assure you it is not. That means that in terms of movement of students, in terms of proximity of students in classrooms, that really does change quite a bit. And so we are going to need to really be looking at when we do return to an in-person format, what that model is going to look like. I'm not at this point ready to say what that will be, but it is something that we are working on diligently. Again, we do have a distance learning academy option that has been offered. And as of Tuesday, we had 1,895 students, pre-K to 8, that have enrolled in our distance learning academy. And again, those students will be able to stay in the distance learning academy for the full academic year. But we have asked if they do wish to, if we resume in person and they do wish to make a change, that happen at a trimester basis. So there is some opportunity for parents to reevaluate as we get to those points in the year. We do have our supervision program that started today. You know, I think it went very well today. I want to thank Michael and Kim and Melissa and you know, Janelle, many members of the staff who have really been pulling this together in very, very short order. You know, from setting up transportation to communicating to setting up, you know, the protocols and you know, making sure that everything was up and running in a relatively short period of time. I think things went very well today. We have a total of 271 district students that are participating in the supervision program, and we have 51 children of faculty or staff that, because of their own district situation or whatever the case may be, need the child supervision in order to be effectively working on site as we have asked them to do. We have space, so if there are situations that arise and you know, parents might need to ask or to try and come back into the program, you know, we should be able to accommodate to some extent that. Daily meal service did resume today. It is somewhat different than what it was in the spring when we went into the stay-at-home order, whereas we don't have the ability to just offer, you know, free lunch to everybody. It has gone back to the normal rules of if you're free or reduced, or you can still purchase a lunch. One of the things that we have done is, you know, so we are utilizing our school sites as pickup sites, but starting on August 31st, we are going to be utilizing some of our contracted buses to be able to transport meals out to the neighborhoods. Again, one of the things that we know is because of the disruption in the learning that occurred when we had to suddenly close and as we were converting over to distance learning in the spring, that there was a major disruption in student learning, and that we are going to have students, we do have students that are coming back to us in all different areas in terms of their academic growth and their academic status. And so after a suitable getting started period, we are going to be assessing students utilizing our NWEA MAP. NWEA MAP, the test that is an adjusting assessment. It is computer-based, and they have moved their platform so that we will be able to do that testing remotely. Now, we also have Beatrice and Mike Prantini have been working together on this so that we are going to be introducing a monitoring kind of master control program called Go Guardian that our teachers will be able to really pretty much see the panel of what students are doing, what they're working on, what their screens look like. If they need to send little side messages, hey, can you refocus? You know, you got it, you know, so they'll be able to kind of have a master monitor. And we'll also increase the security of the assessment so that we can lock down the machines so kids can't click away or try to, go and look up other things or, whatever the case may be. All they'll be able to do is the assessment. So we will be introducing that to try and really make the assessment period as effective as possible. So that assessment period will begin on September 1st, and then we will be having our first planning day on teacher planning day on September 11th, and that the data from the MAP assessment will be utilized on that planning day, and that's where we're going to solidify our class placements, really understanding what kids' needs are and how we need to adjust to try and meet their needs in a remote format. So I wanted to spend just a couple minutes, because I know it's been a topic of frequent conversation over the months, about how are we sure that distance learning is going to be different now than it was in the spring. And so I just wanted to kind of put a couple of bullet points. In the spring, it was a sudden shift. It was something that had to occur in 3 days. We had never done it before. Very few school districts had. There were a couple of pilot districts, Gurnee being one, a couple of other, I think Leiden, at the high school level, that had tested distance learning as an alternative to a snow day, but by and large, this hadn't been done before. It stressed our technology platforms. We had very little time to get our Chromebooks out and to ensure that we had the kind of security, particularly in video conferencing, that we needed, and that took some time to address and to build up with Google Meets and even Zoom. Everybody went to Zoom and found out that the security in Zoom was not great. So, though that was an impediment. Obviously, a lack of universal access to Wi-Fi for some of our students. And a big thing was the restrictions that were placed on us by the state board, well-intentioned, but really led to kind of putting us into a bind in terms of the amount of time we could spend with students actively learning. And then certainly our grading and assessing was not something that we were able to continue on with in a traditional format. I think another thing here is the fact that we were cut off from each other. During the stay at home, teachers couldn't access their classrooms, they couldn't access each other. It was, it was kind of this, it was a massive, disruption. And of course, obviously had great difficulty in offering our related services for our special education services. So what's different now? So obviously we have taken the lessons that we've learned from spring 2020, and that has driven our preparation for our fall distance learning. We have introduced several new and upgraded systems. Google Meet has been vastly upgraded. Google really has worked very hard to try and upgrade their platform. The introduction of Schoology, which is not being widely used at this point because we're still transitioning, but that is a platform that is going to really, as it is introduced, support our teachers to kind of have a unified kind of control panel, I suppose you can call it, for delivery of lessons, Google Classroom, Seesaw. So there's a lot of additional resources that we have acquired and are implementing that will support learning of our students. ISB has kind of backed off. In fact, they are now requiring 5 hours of active learning on a daily basis. So, they've reevaluated and understand that what they did in the spring was maybe appropriate for that time, but that was a transitional time, and that we do need to return to some level of normalcy. And so they have provided that flexibility at this point. I think the major thing is that in terms of, because our systems have been upgraded, because we are more comfortable with live conferencing and such, that we are going to, and we are expecting a much higher level of synchronous instruction. So that synchronous being live instruction, particularly for core subjects. You know, Kim and the student services team have been working very hard and ensuring that through teletherapy, through small group, in person or remote, that our special education services are being offered and needs are being met. And just, you know, as it kind of goes on, you know, faculty and staff being back on site, having having access to each other, having access to their classrooms, being on our network, as opposed to being at the mercy of whatever their home internet access might be. And then, of course, a huge piece is that now having Wi-Fi hotspots that we can provide for students that do not have a stable internet connection at home. So I think all of those things taken as a whole really puts us in a much stronger position to offer an effective distance learning program. Obviously, we have a continued and deep focus on the social emotional wellness of our students and staff and families. This is a time of high anxiety. This has been a anxious week, as you would expect, for the staff, for parents, and for kids too, I'm sure. So we recognize that these are things that as we go through this year, we need to make sure we are really keeping our ear to the ground, so to speak, and actively seeking to identify and support anybody who may be in need of that social emotional support. And to that end, Kim Klein and her team over the course of the summer really were looking to identify resources that we can utilize to survey, to screen, to really actively gather information that would help us identify, you know, students or groups of students that we need to focus and you know, get some additional support. And so we will be implementing a system called Panorama Education. This is a system that has a multitude of different types of staff and student, and other parent surveys as well. Yeah, staff, student, parent surveys that really we can tailor to get at specific social emotionally related you know, topics, equity topics. There's a lot, you know, there's a lot of good, solid use for this system. So it's going to be pretty versatile as we're able to kind of dig into it more. But we're going to be doing our initial staff surveying starting on the 31st. Yeah, 2 weeks, okay. And then our plan is to do our student survey in the latter part of September. Is that right? Yeah. And we're still looking at, you know, we kind of need to learn how to walk before we can run. So we want to go through that before we start to take a look at parent, you know, surveys and things of that nature. But I shared with the board last week the link to the Panorama Education site. You know, if you wanted to see it more deeply, you know, Kim would, you know, you can set up some time with Kim. She can show it to you a little bit more in depth, but just really a nice system that I think is going to be very useful for us. So that's the end of my slide deck. I did want to show just very quickly on the topic of the SEL, Kim just shared it with me today. She doesn't know I'm about to do this, but our social workers have created a resource site, a page that will be accessible through our website, and it's just really outstanding. So I just want to, I'll switch over here to the new share. But they've put together a resource site where it's broken out. Now, this is just the elementary at this point in time. But you can see that at the different levels, and this is for staff and also for parents, that there are some suggested, or you know, there's links to resources, suggested activities that people can utilize to try and just, you know, help kids who might be feeling anxious. You know, this is just, again, that whole, for many of our kids and adults, just the act of coloring is a very therapeutic kind of activity. You know, again, there's some good little links to some YouTube videos. This is one with Common and Elmo and kind of teaching breathing. So just a lot of great resources that people can be taking a look at. And then I think the big thing, again, for both our staff as well as for parents, links to the various outside counseling services that are available, as well as then sorry, I need to, for financial hardship, some resources that people can be accessing or referring to as we go through the year. So again, just emblematic of the focus on the health and wellness of our kids, of our staff, of our community, and just one example of some amazing work that our staff is doing to try and support our community. And just very quickly, I wanted to give a very brief overview of what our attendance was today. For our first day, and again, all remote, I think our attendance was very strong. Total attendance rate of 90% at the elementary schools. A total attendance rate of 95% at the middle schools. And so across the district, our daily attendance today for the first day was at 92%. And for a remote start for a Thursday, I think that's pretty strong. Obviously, we want closer to 98, 99%, but those numbers are going to go up. We, particularly at the elementary, we know that there are some late starts. If people are, they might be traveling still if they were visiting their country of origin or whatever the case may be. So. But we'll absolutely be very closely monitoring our remote attendance on a daily basis. But I was very pleased with what I saw here today. So this is all attendance. Yeah. So all students. So with that, I will conclude my report.
Okay. Any questions? Right, Bill?
Couple quick things. First of all, Kim, that's outstanding that we're able to offer that. Is it possible we could put that on our Facebook page so we could all blast that out on our Facebook pages? Because I think our community would really like to see that.
The social worker shared it with me this evening that I forwarded to Mike. Social workers have been working endlessly, and that was asking for a single sense of extra duty pay, and they've been doing such a phenomenal job that they really deserve a lot of recognition for some of the things in place for the start of the school year. So yes, I will let me touch base with them to let them know where this went in a matter of hours. But yeah.
Yeah, no one knew I was going to show this tonight. I literally saw it for the first time at 5:30. So.
Okay, and then a couple questions, quick questions for you, Mike. Regarding the lunches, the bus route, and the in-person pickup,
Mhm.
is there going to be a sign-up process for them that the parents will be able to? I mean, I assume they're just not going to drop by and pick up a lunch without letting people know that.
Actually, they can. So like even today, they were outside right in front of London, set up so that as people drove in, it's a curbside pickup. So it's on demand. They have the everything ready, and again, if they're not free or reduced, all they need to do is give the child's ID number, and it would, like for the, their accounting will get taken care of through that. So, and then Michael, as they start to take these into the neighborhoods with the buses, you want to talk a little bit about exactly how that'll look?
Yes, so we are actually rolling out an app that students will be able to order breakfast and lunch so that they
That's what I
have
was thinking.
the number of meals to prepare, because obviously when we have not just free and reduced, but we also have pay students, we get charged for lunches that we don't use. So the app will be rolling out. It's just been a whirlwind of activity. So the thought is the bus routes for food and the apps will start on or after August 31st. But until then, they can come to the school to pick up food.
And then just as a matter of clarity, you said classroom assignments won't be finalized till September.
Bill, I can't hear you. You got to talk louder.
I can't get any closer without doing this.
Now I can hear you.
Mike, regarding the September, trying to get here, the September 11th date after the testing and assessment is done, to be clear, teacher assignments today aren't 100% final.
Student assignments aren't 100%, yes. So, and that has been, communicated in the things that we have sent out to parents. I don't anticipate there being wholesale change. And also some of this may very well result in some flexible grouping being done at the team level as opposed to a change in teacher of record. So
Okay,
I don't want to characterize it as being we reshuffle the entire deck on September 11th, but there might be some change, and that is going to be based on the needs of students. I think one of the things that it is very important to note is that because we are in such a situation where we are going to have kids in all kinds of different spaces, while we normally wouldn't want to just kind of, divide kids into very specific groups. We like the heterogeneous classroom environment. We also do need to make sure that we have some mechanism by which we can intervene and really work at a specific level to try and support those kids. So whether that be through flexible grouping, or we might have to do some minor modifications that will present itself as we're looking at the data.
great, thank you.
Bill, I have a quick question.
Yes.
Oh. Sorry, it was someone else. With the plan to reopen in-person instruction in October, will there be, or what will the communication to families be if they want to change their minds from what they opted in or out of before school started?
Right. So once we know what that is going to look like, we will communicate exactly what the circumstances will be. And we will, again, we're going to ask, particularly if we have a situation of students or whose parents would like them to move out of the distance learning academy back into the in-person, that we do that at the trimester level. That really is going to be critical because it's going to impact staffing. So if there's a high attrition rate coming out of the distance learning academy because we're back in person, we're going to need to reassign staff. And so that will not happen quickly. Now, there might be some frustration with that, but to be blunt, there's nothing I can do about that. Like I have to, the staff follows the kids. And so it is going to take some time, and there's going to need to be some level of patience. But as I've said over the summer, we will do our best to provide as many on and off ramps as we can. It just is not necessarily going to be immediate. So,
Okay,
Is there another question?
thank you.
Is that it?
Getting real close, Arlen. I would just, talk about things coming out daily, and I just saw today that the White House has decided to determine that teachers are essential workers. And I'm wondering, your thoughts on that, and obviously it's hours old, but, and can we expect any change as a result of that, or we're just gonna keep it on?
So teachers have always been considered essential workers.
Yeah.
What the White House has said is that they are now part of critical infrastructure. And as a result, I don't remember the exact wording, but they would, in essence, be considered exempt from quarantine requirements. I got to tell you, no,
That's crazy.
absolutely not.
That's crazy.
Unless it is a federal mandate, that is not something we will do.
No.
I can't, in good conscience, I cannot, allow that. That is a risk to the health and safety of the staff, to the risk of the health and safety of kids and their families. I
Yeah.
will not do it, unless it is an order of the federal government and a court decision of the Seventh Circuit.
Let's not jump off the deep end quite yet.
Well, I know. I'm just saying.
But
Let's
thanks
not
for the
what, Phil?
Thanks for the warning.
Let's
Yeah.
not what?
I said, let's not jump off the deep end just yet.
No, because the state would have to, the state's not going to enforce that anyway, so.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. That, good opening day. Good report. Next is our public comment section. We will now receive public comment for up to 3 minutes. To not include discussion of personnel matters. So, does anyone in our vast array of citizens here in the physical facility have any public comment? Seeing none, thank you. We will move on to the to consent agenda. Couple comments. I had a couple of financial questions that were answered without any problems. And let's see, we had 3 FOIA requests and no travel expenses. Does anybody need anything pulled from the consent agenda? Seeing none, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second,
Thank you. Debbie?
Okay, Bill,
Aye.
Jessica,
yes.
myself, yes, Phil,
Aye.
Arlen,
Aye.
and Stacy.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. We will now move into board discussion. Dr. Conley is going to bring us up to date on ensuring a more just and equitable society and how we're doing that.
So I don't have a lot of additional information this month, other than the fact that if you recall last month, the board authorized us to sponsor and support the implicit bias training that the League of Women Voters was providing. I know several board members participated in that training, as did I. I thought it was a very well done training, to the extent that I have not had the opportunity to reach out to the presenter, but I would like to get into contact with the presenter and take a look at what we might be able to do from a staff development perspective, from just our own community perspective, if there are some additional, kind of things that we might be able to pursue. So as it relates to the superintendent's committee that we spoke about last month, I have not made much headway there for obvious reasons. Just trying to prioritize here, but that is still on my radar. It is still something that I'm very very much looking forward to pivoting to and starting to work through. And so my intent is to be able to bring you an update on that in September for our board meeting. So, but if just kind of open it up for those of you that participated, if you had any thoughts that you wanted to add.
Mine's not very substantive, but it's sort of in the humorous anecdote. Many years ago, from 1983 to 1991, I had a retail store, and one of the 2 interpreters for the League of Women Voters worked for me. So I just,
Who was it? Who?
Stacy Shine, and her married name has a hyphen after that, but we reconnected for a while after, during, and as part of that. But I thought it was very well spent. I thought it was well organized. Heidi did a nice job in getting it together, introducing it, summing it up, and I thought the speaker did a nice job. I enjoyed the breakout portions of that as well.
Yeah, I have to say, unfortunately, I missed it. It was my father-in-law's birthday, and attendance was mandatory, so I unfortunately missed the event, but hopefully next time.
I saw an AG on one of the participants. I thought for sure that was you, but apparently
There
not.
may be another AG in this world.
Anybody, Jess, did you have?
Go ahead, Jeff.
I did attend the training. I thought it was excellent. I thought it was well paced, very well thought out. It's not the first implicit bias training I've done, and it certainly won't be the last. It's always encouraging and horrifying going through the process, confronting your own biases and recognizing how much work you have to do as an individual, but also recognizing how far you've come. And I thought I too enjoyed the breakout sessions. We had a really neat discussion in our small group about, the efforts that we're doing as individuals and things we want to see from our kids. So I really want to thank Dr. Peary for doing the presentation. I also thought it was a neat partnership with the League of Women Voters. And if we can continue to do similar partnerships like that, I would certainly be supportive of it.
Bill?
I'll echo everything Jessica said, but I'll just add one thing. Mike, I know the League of Women Voters put the presentation on their website. If we could link it to ours, then Ireland and the rest of our community could much more easily review it. I mean, they won't be able to do the breakout rooms, but at least be able to see the presentation, which was outstanding.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So it's currently still on their website?
If it's not, you could go to my Facebook page because I linked it
Okay.
and we'll put it on from there.
You know what, I'm gonna check with Heidi and make sure that, because, sometimes when the presenters are, there's, proprietary, we want to make sure that it's okay to do that link, but I will absolutely check into it. And if they're okay with it, we'll put a link on, no problem.
Great. Thank you.
Tara, do you want to just kind of jot that down so we can follow up on that? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Anybody else? Deb, did you have?
I was unable to attend, so
Okay.
I'd love to see it online, yes.
Okay, we'll look forward to the next item falling under that, and we'll get you a couple of our board members to participate in the committee as well. Anyone who might be interested, let me know off site, okay? And now we move into new business. We have 3 items on the new business. First one is approval of the tentative year's budget. Michael?
I am pulling it up right now. All right, so it's that time of year again. It is time to go ahead and look at the tentative budget for the next school year. Only in a state like Illinois can you approve your final budget 3 months into the fiscal year. So, but it gives us plenty of time to get it right. So, as you know, a budget is basically a plan. It helps us plan for the delivery of our instruction, operational services, establish financial goals of the district so that we can accomplish those and continue moving in a positive direction so that we can provide all the necessary services to our students. As you know, there's an approval timeline that comes straight out of the school code with this. After tonight, we'll go ahead and place the tentative budget on display for 30 days. Schedule the date for the public hearing, which will be during the September board meeting, which will be on September 28th. We'll publish that notice in a public hearing in the paper. September 30th. Conduct the public hearing, and then we will go ahead and submit that document to the state board and the county as required. Some positive ending information from the fiscal year 2020. As we had talked about in changing auditors and looking at the way things were booked and the fund balances determined, we did see an additional $9.1 million come to our fund balance because the way that our former auditors booked the payroll deduction liability for health insurance funds that had been collected was being booked as a carrying expense, which was a negative against our fund balance. As you know, we're based off of a fiscal year, and then they actually report out what the outstanding liabilities or projected outstanding liabilities are at the end of each year. So part of that $9.1 million is $7 million in the payroll deduction liabilities that have now been converted into fund balance dollars. So that's a positive. We also learned that there was, based upon the way property taxes were booked, they were booked so that we were short at about $2.1 million. As you know, we take in a lot more than that in property taxes, but that little booking error caused it to look like those collections were not being made in a timely fashion or not being booked in the appropriate fiscal year. So that allowed us to get to about $9.1 million in additional fund balance, which obviously going into this school year with added expenses for the pandemic has been helpful. Another really good news point was, as you know, we anticipated about a $5 to $7 million surplus last year based upon revenues to expenditures. We actually have come in, we're waiting for the final audit numbers, conservatively between $9 and $11 million, potentially $10 to $12 million. So When you put those together, we have somewhere between an additional 18 to $20 million in our fund balance, all because we went ahead and looked at the way that our audit was being conducted, for a large part, that first note, and then the second note being fiscal responsibility that the board has continued to practice over the last number of years to get us back on the right path after a few down years. Overview of revenues. As you all know, there's local, state, and federal revenues. Our projection has reduced by a good number our local revenues. We know that in 2008 and 2009, the last real estate crash, so the most recent time that we could go ahead and compare a down property tax year, our collections were at about 95% in those 2 years, so still very healthy. We have projected real estate taxes at about 87.5 to 90%, because even though we think based on early collections, we're not far down in where we are, and remember, the county has allowed for a 2-month grace period with no penalty. So receipts started coming in a little bit slow as of August 1st, but they have now gone ahead and picked up, and we're catching up to where we were last year. So we're hoping that that projection is actually very conservative. We'll see more money, but that is going to attribute to why you see a larger deficit than you would have thought based upon the year as we go forward. So that's why I wanted to explain that. We also got the CPPRT numbers. The county anticipates only about a 17% drop off in that number. So it means just a couple $100,000 difference to us from what it was last year. Still down, and we actually ended up underestimating that number as well, because I just don't know that the county and the state, with the sales tax that was collected during this year, our May payment was about 45% of what it normally is. You know, they put out these numbers, but again, that's a projection for them. They're typically fairly close, but given the economic climate, I think it's better for us to be conservative. Tonight, we're also going to talk about waiving fees and different costs for students as a 1-year freeze, so that we go ahead and provide some economic relief to our families that are in need. So those are the kind of the reasons that the local revenues are reduced. The state has promised us fiscal year 20 levels of funding. I have my doubts about that. I think they will try and keep the evidence-based funding the same, although we cut that by still about 10% just to be conservative. We also looked at categorical payments and greatly reduced those. When you look at the 5036, the state budget form, you'll see that our estimate on transportation is way down. One, we didn't run transportation, even though our 40% payment is claimable under the statute and under the transportation claim. We did go ahead and file that, but our costs for transportation were lower last year, and we think that the money the state's going to be able to give, if we've seen anything over the years where they cut first, is transportation, and then they'll go to some of the other categoricals. So we've reduced that. We have slightly reduced the federal numbers. Most people believe that the federal numbers will stay pretty consistent, that's the one place, because they're flow-through dollars off into the state, that we're not going to see a dip. But if the state can't make its payments in other areas, I would expect that we will see some of those dollars diverted to other areas. So we have reduced those slightly. So we have a very conservative revenue projection for the year. As far as keys to new revenues and expenses, one of the things you've heard a lot about is almost $1.1 million in CARES Act funding we got based off of the formula utilized by the government. That is an additional revenue stream that will make up for some of the dollars that we aren't seeing. However, those dollars are being spent on things we need to deal with the pandemic. So it's more of an offset than anything, because we increased our spending for this event. And it's basically offsetting, and let's be honest, that probably is not going to cover the total amount of money. We are hoping for a second stimulus package, maybe even a third, but you know what? We're not going to put any dollars in there for that at this time. The FEMA grant we applied for, we've been approved. All of our application materials are there. That's $130,000. Hopefully that gets funded in full. So we did put that in because we've been getting very good information and guarantees that that's there. But again, being conservative, you know, we'll take a look at that as we get towards the final budget to see if we should scale back that number at all. As far as expenses related to COVID and our response to it, to date, we've spent about $850,000 in supplies and equipment. Those include those electrostatic ionizers, hand sanitizer stations, masks for students and staff, face shields, gowns, gloves, thermometers, you name it, we've been buying it. As I've said before, in a couple of years when this passes, we'll probably have the world's largest garage sale here. So, but a lot of this stuff, the good news is like the hand sanitizing stations that you see in the hallways. We also got touchless water coolers that, you know, the bottle filling stations are about $2,500 a piece. And then to install them is about another 500. Those cost us about $350 and tantamount to about another $350 to install. So we can utilize those for a long time and keep kids safe instead of having them drink directly out of drinking fountains. The hand sanitizing stations will be something we use for a long time based off of flu season and just general cleanliness. And then the other part of the expenses that are an increase are the additional salaries for the obviously health assistants and extra aides and supervision for students when we're either in the remote program with the supervision option or when kids return. And also the expansion of student services, which is a must for our program to meet the needs of our students. But remember, the student services salaries are offset by a big savings in our tuition dollars and shared services with NSSEO. So overall, the salaries have increased the budget by about 5.7, or the total salaries by about 5.75%. Given the fact that we've added almost 50 positions, that's really not a bad number, and it shows the value of as people retire from the district because they've served their years and they want to move on, being able to replace them with newer teachers, and that doesn't necessarily mean cheaper teachers, but just teachers that are newer on the pay scale. We are only about 2.5% above where our rate would have been if everybody would have stayed the same for last year. So that's really good news for us. Different expenditure classifications as far as what we look at. These are how we book those expenditures. The key one here, because I think everybody's familiar with those 7 on the left, is contingencies. We use very effectively contingencies in District 21 to go ahead and plan for either rainy days, or if it's in the O&M fund, planning for transfers into capital projects so that we can continuously work on our facilities and upgrade classrooms and do the things necessary to keep our learning environments fresh. So we have $2.7 million in contingencies alone built into the budget right now. So when you see what we're going to see in the slides regarding what the fund balance is and what the totals look like, you will see if we don't spend our contingencies, and last year in the Ed Fund, we did not spend much of the contingency at all. It was about 25 to 30%. That money would return, it would come off of any projected deficit because contingencies are counted as expenses. So getting into the operating funds, as you can see, if you look at our amended budget from FY20, that's on the left. The tentative budget for FY21 is on the right. And then you get into favorable and unfavorable on a year-to-year basis. One of the things you'll notice is the projected surplus in FY20 was $7.5 million. Because we don't have the final audited fund balance, that's why I didn't put in what the actual spend and surplus was. But that was the projection. And at that projection, we were going to be at a 31% fund balance, meaning, or percent of expenditures to fund balance. If by state standards, that's a very balanced budget. The nice thing is by having that surplus, the beginning fund balance for FY21, for FY21 is about $50 million, just short of it, $49.3 million. That is a large increase. Again, that comes from what we did with the auditors, what we did with the spending. And so if we look at that, even after we would take all of the FY21 spend, even though we're spending at a deficit, we still would be at a 41.8% increase from the close of FY19. So if you take that over 2 years, I think a lot of people would take that type of return on investment and make sure that we're moving in the right direction. So That's something that we can be really proud of. When we go to all funds, you can see that these numbers look a lot higher. Now, remember, the 69% that were at the beginning of FY21, so the close of FY20, that includes the $23.5 million that we just took in from the bond sale for the second part of the referendum. So if we took out capital project spend and revenue, we're still at a 55% overall fund balance increase in all funds. So that takes that into account everything we spend, whether it's debt service, IMRF and Social Security, any money that would go in and out of working cash, our life safety fund. So we are definitely moving in the right direction still. And one of the numbers that I wanted to point out is that on both these slides, we have, if we go back to operating funds and we go back to all funds, we look at what this would mean if we spent the budget as it's stated right now, what that fund balance would be. And yes, the overall fund balance drops by about $13 million. That's though because we're looking at all funds, and that's including the capital spend. So that's the $11 million we spend this year. That's the total dollars from what we're looking at in across all funds. So we are still positive to where we were at the close of FY19. We're still positive to where we thought we would be at this point if you would have asked us at the beginning of FY20. So I think while the good news is we have done a great job, and the bad news is we've had to spend a lot more money this year to prepare for the year, we are still in a positive position to where we would have been had we had just stayed stagnant 2 years ago. We are still growing fund balance. Yes, we're going to take a small step back this year. I will tell you these numbers are not final by any stretch of the imagination. We do know that there is some cushion in IMRF because we still have a lot of IMRF employees to hire. There is still some cushion in some of the other areas that we'll start taking a scalpel to. We're not going to take a weed whacker to it. We know there are things we need to spend, but there are also things we can control a little bit. So I think when we come back next month, you'll see some slightly smaller numbers on the expense, maybe some better numbers on revenue if we can see property taxes are tracking the way they are right now. And I still think we're in a great position moving forward. Next steps on that left-hand side, what are we doing with revenue and expenditure? We're looking at property tax, state funding, grant funding, COVID funding, any funding we can get at this point we're looking at. Expenditure-wise, we'll continue to monitor salary and benefits. We'll look at contract services, supplies, COVID materials. We'll look at those contingencies. But it's nice to have those contingencies because, again, this is a worst-case scenario plan. And our worst-case scenario plan is still doing better than a lot of other districts are. And we can always rein things in as we go through the year if we start to see some things going awry, which is why we're going to start some, Mike and I have talked about either monthly or quarterly budget meetings with departments, principals, to go ahead and make sure everybody's on task to go ahead and spend in the way that really benefits the district and the students mutually. And then required actions, we have to obviously, like I said at the beginning, public hearing, board action to approve the budget, submit to ISB, file with the county clerk, and again, monitor those budgets with all our different budget holders. So that is the 2021 tentative budget at a glance. Tonight, we're just basically approving the posting. It'll go on display on the website and physically at the district office for 30 days if anybody wants to come see it. And we'll go from there. Any questions?
Do I have any questions or clarifications for Michael? I gotta say, this is a lot better than what you and Mike and I spoke about not that long ago. So I'm thrilled to see the projected bottom lines on this. Arlen, go ahead.
Michael, how many ionizers did we buy and what do those cost?
So the ionizer, we bought an ionizer for each building. We also have 3 backpack ionizers for each building, as well as 1 handheld ionizer for each building. The handheld are used in nurses' offices, smaller spaces. The backpacks can be used in classrooms or buses or different spaces. And then the regular electrostatic ionizer is something that can be put in a room in 2 to 3 minutes. It disinfects a room. Clorox and the FDA have said that's a 72-hour disinfectant. Obviously, we would continue to wipe down services and ionize if we thought that there was a need for it. The bigger versions cost a little over $1,500 a piece, the full room ones. The backpacks are about $900, and then the wands are about half of that. So we're also looking into, there is a company that has started making chemicals. You can make them on site using water, salt, electricity. It ionizes the materials so that you can actually produce your own chemical. And that way it not only is it safe, not only is it green, but you control the supply. You don't need to go out and purchase from somebody. It also reduces your cleaning supplies down to two. One's a disinfectant and one's a cleaning solution that, you know, is a wipe down degreaser type thing. So that's something Bill had brought to me, and it's something we're looking into because that could be a revolutionary change in our chemicals. So the ionizers are going to be a great product. If we can get a substitute chemical rather than Clorox, it would really be a game changer cost-wise for us.
Do we have any update on our ability to maintain the various products that we're going to need during the course of the year, Michael?
Bill and Glenn have constantly been updating us on what we have and don't have. Obviously, the Department of Public Health and ISB changing regulations on masks 3 times in the last week, essentially, has not helped, but we have been out in front of it. They're monitoring sources. We've already placed a new order on N95 masks just to make sure when kids come back, we have enough, because we're confident for now we have plenty while we just have staff in the building. But we're trying to stay ahead of that as much as possible. And right now we've got a really good stockpile. I know we have a list that was provided at the last board meeting of what we had purchased. We'll go ahead and update that so that you can see exactly what's on hand. So,
Arlen, you had another question? Comment?
So dealing with the tough issues that Dr. Conley's dealing with, and having financial problems is one thing. But where we are today compared to where we were just a few years ago makes, I think, his job a whole lot easier because the resources are here to do what he's got to do. The buildings can handle the Wi-Fi. We know there are a lot of school districts struggling with having the Wi-Fi capacity today that District 21 has. I'm just thankful that Mike and Michael were not on commission because of the amount of money the two of them have saved this district, and all the hard work that they've put in is just absolutely outstanding.
Mhm.
And I want to thank you guys again.
if I could say, it is a total team effort. I mean, every department, every building principal has done a great job. Melissa has been phenomenal as we all deal with a higher level issue on the pandemic response. The business office team and all the department teams have been absolutely wonderful.
Thank you, Michael. Bill?
First off, the work is great, especially because of where we're going to likely be a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. The building up of that fund balance right now is an exceptional thing to put us into position going forward. Just as a question, are we going to be having a conversation at the finance committee level about our fund balance policy? I know there was one begun before everything crashed down upon us.
Right. So we can certainly continue that conversation. I think my recollection was that the direction of the board had really kind of been affirmed, which to try and make sure that we had that range of not dropping below the mid 30s, and trying to make sure that we so that was kind of like the ceiling, the floor.
Right, but I don't know
had been
that we
set.
actually committed that to policy yet, have we?
It isn't as I recall, the conversation was more of a concept of, instead of enshrining that in board policy, was to have that be something that was a directive of the board, that then was an administratively, it was a target that the administration was expected to hit. Again, that's just my recollection.
Right.
So we can
We
take
can
up.
always
Yeah.
check, bring that back to the table for further discussion. If
Thank
there's a desire to do so. Okay. The chair would entertain a motion on this topic, please.
So we need the resolution for the hearing, public hearing.
Yes.
Be it resolved, whereas it is necessary for the Board of Education to fix the time and place for a public hearing on the tentative budget for fiscal year 2021, and to fix the place where the same will be conveniently available for public inspection, and to direct that notice of the public hearing and place of inspection to be published according to law. Do you want me to read the rest of it, or is that okay? All right.
As long as you say moved. You
I'm
need to
sorry?
move, you need to move it. You just started reading the
Move,
resolution. Yeah,
I move the resolution that I just read.
thank you.
Is there a
I thought
second?
I was doing that at one time, but okay.
Is there a second?
Second,
Thanks, Bill. Deb?
Jessica,
Yes.
myself, yes. Phil,
Aye.
Arlen,
Aye.
Stacy,
Yes.
Bill.
aye.
Item 2 under new business is, what's this? A registration fee holiday?
Yes.
Bring it on. Bring it on.
Given the nature of the circumstances that we find ourselves in, administratively, we discussed really the need to grant a student registration fee holiday for the current school year. As Michael already addressed in his budget report, it is something that we feel is necessary to support our community, because we know many of our families are really financially struggling, or uncertainty is ahead. So it's a gesture to try and make it a little bit easier.
Any questions? Can we do this by acclamation after it's moved?
It's a financial issue, so you have to take a roll call on it.
Be it resolved, the Board of Education approves the revised 2020-21 registration fee recommendations as presented.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, myself, yes. Phil,
Aye.
Arlen,
Aye.
Stacy,
Yes.
Bill,
Aye.
Jessica.
Yes.
There we go. Item 3, or C, on our new business approval, proposal to upgrade boardroom audiovisual system.
So anybody who has been tuning into any of the Zoom meetings knows that our audiovisual system in the boardroom is in need of help. It is an antiquated system. The microphones are limited in their reach and effectiveness. And also, as we have kind of entered into that period of live streaming and providing additional access to meetings, to our community, I think there's some value in continuing that if that's the board's decision. So to have a setup within the boardroom to be able to do that without, quite frankly, our tech team spending hours every single time we set up for a board meeting, getting it together would be very good. The other thing is that our boardroom is also our major professional development space. And so having an upgraded audio and video system will allow us to more effectively capture and record the professional development that we're doing, which again is something that we are going to be really working towards doing within our new staff learning management system, so that we know we have a paucity of subs. There are people that can't necessarily make it to a training live, and having the ability to have that, a record of that, to have it uploaded, to have it on demand, is going to be something that is going to be very a value added to our staff and their professional development. So with that in mind, the proposals that Mike went out and got and vetted accomplishes what I think is a very necessary upgrade. It increases transparency. It increases our ability to have a quality discussion to people can hear, people can see, and it's just updating. It's time. So
Board members, you know, I have shared my thoughts on this to each of you. Some of the things that we've been saying to our community over the last couple of years, beginning with the referendum, was that we're looking to enhance our community participation, our outreach, our transparency in the way that we operate. And I think this goes a long way towards accomplishing that. We've also, over the years, in fact, I think it went back to Rich Rosen, it might have, that, or maybe it was Jeff Patinas, talked about putting our meetings on broadcast. And we all just sort of rolled our eyes a little bit at the time because there wasn't money there to even look into it really seriously. But I think this is a proposal whose time has definitely come, and I'll entertain other comments or suggestions.
I'll echo that. I mean, this is a different world, and when you and I got on the board, people expect more accountability. They expect to be able to know what their elected public officials are doing and how they're doing it and how they're conducting business. And I think this allows us to communicate with the community at large, not just with our parents. And to me, that's, as a school district covering so many different communities, that's the future. If we don't communicate with our community and voters across the boards, there'll be tough times in the future. So I think it's a marvelous idea. I'm totally in support.
Well, again, when you and I first got on the board, people were still living in caves, so.
Well,
I
we
think this
had
is
string and
definitely an
can then. We had those little cans and a string across the room, if you remember, Phil.
update. Stacy, did you have your hand up?
I just had a question. I couldn't tell from the documents. It appears that there's two separate proposals in front of the board, one for audio and one for audio and video.
Mhm.
I'm guessing that doing both of them now is cheaper than doing one now and another one later. But
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Any other comments? Chair will entertain a motion.
So again, just before that, it's the second resolution option
Yes.
in the agenda. So I just want to make sure that that was
It's the one for 60,000, I
correct.
believe, and
Yes.
change.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll move that the board accept the Integra audio and video proposal for August 2020 to the amount of 60. What was did you have the exact dollar amount, Phil?
Yeah, it's
60,884.
60,884.
60,884.
Second,
Thank you, Jessica.
Okay,
Deb?
myself, yes. Phil,
Aye.
Arlen,
Aye.
Stacy,
yes,
Bill,
Aye.
and Jessica.
yes.
Does anyone have anything else to bring up before we move to adjournment? I can't remember an August meeting where we had one unaffiliated district person in attendance. It always seemed like we had several score of folks. So congratulations
We
to
don't have
staff.
multi-level classes this year.
What's it? Yeah, well, okay. That may have helped, Deb, please.
Uh-huh.
So congratulations to the staff for the preparation leading up to today.
And for the opening of school.
Yep, absolutely. And the next meeting of the district is the third Thursday in September, which I believe is the 24th. At this point, I think we're planning to be back in the boardroom. If not, it'll be so identified. So may we have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Deb?
Phil,
Aye.
myself, yes. Arlen,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Stacy,
yes.
Jessica.
Yes.
Thank you all. Have a pleasant evening. Stay safe, stay sane. And we'll see you on the other side.